Like we have a quorum. Josh, team, are we good to get started? You're on mute, but I think I saw the thumbs up. Okay, perfect. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday, January 17th, 2023 meeting of the Ann Arbor Parks Advisory Commission. This meeting will be broadcast live on CTN Cable Channel 19 and online at a2gov.org/watchctn. To speak at public comment, please call, toll free 877-853-5247 or one of the other published numbers and enter meeting ID 949-7173-0458. And with that, I think we are ready to call the roll. Josh.
Sounds good. Commissioner Borgsdorf.
Present in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Kraut. Commissioner London.
Present in Ypsilanti.
Commissioner Marson.
Present in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Montague. Commissioner O'Connell.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Ramaswamy. Commissioner Skylas. Councilmember Redina.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Councilmember Watson.
Here in Ann Arbor.
You have a quorum.
Terrific. Thanks, everyone. We'll move on to number 3 on our agenda, which is approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda today?
Yes, I noticed that we didn't have on the agenda our normal reports from the Parks Director, RAC, and relevant commissions.
Oh, yeah.
So I'd propose that we add those, and I'm sorry that I didn't notice it earlier.
Nor did I. Thank you very much. That would go under tab 7, I think. After 7A, should we put it in 7B, perhaps, in the reports? Okay.
Sure.
Thank you very much for pointing that out. Do we need a motion to approve the addition? Anne, would you mind making that motion?
I would move that we approve the agenda with the addition.
All right. Is there a second? I saw Steve's hand. Thanks, Steve. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of Anne's motion to add the report section, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, no? All right, motion carries. Thank you so much, Anne. I appreciate it. Moving on to, any other changes to the agenda? I think we're good. We're moving on to section 4, which is public commentary. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak to PAC. And are there any callers waiting on the line?
There are not.
All right, there'll be a second public commentary later in the meeting. We'll move on to number 5, approval of our minutes. We actually have 2 sets of minutes to approve today. One is our regular meeting minutes from the PAC meeting held on December 20th, 22. We also have the minutes from our January 3rd PAC special meeting regarding the PROS plan. Is there a motion to approve?
It's like a typographical point, but in the public commentary section, I think for both minutes, we typoed Linda Brower's last name. It's like slightly spelled differently in both. Other than that, I didn't have any further changes or suggestions for the minutes. They look good to me.
Right.
So
amendment to Ms. Brower's name. Noted.
Yeah, the only other thing I noticed was in the December 20th minutes, item 8A, there was some extra, maybe like some copy paste text that snuck in there that says something about the mayor indicating that the motion carried. I don't think the mayor has attended any of our meetings. So I would just propose that get fixed as well.
Perfect. Is that a line edit that can be made easily, do we think?
Yeah,
really,
I believe so. Yeah.
Take that out. So with the removal of that copy paste language, and the amendment to Ms. Brower's name. I think with those two corrections, is there a motion to approve the two sets of minutes? Motion by Larry. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Anne. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
All opposed? No? All right, thank you. Motion carries. We should make the appropriate edits to the meeting minutes. Thank you, Eagle Eye. Both of you. I appreciate it. Moving on to our presentations today. First, we have the Tree Line Conservancy. Nan Plummer and Norman Herbert are here to discuss an update from the Tree Line Conservancy. And thank you so much for being here today. We'll cede the floor.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate this time. I'm Nan, and I don't see myself, so if that's a problem, let me know. I'm Nan Plummer. I'm the executive director of the Tree Line, and Norman Herbert is one of our two co-chairs and the one most intimately involved with day-to-day operations. And we are lucky to have him. I have a PowerPoint, if that's okay. We only have a few minutes and we're going to zip through it and make it just as brisk as possible so that we can answer any questions that you might have. And let's see, I need to share my screen, right? Let's do that. Are you seeing what we need to see here? Maybe we need to see it as a slideshow here. That would be helpful, wouldn't it? There we go. Again, we're very grateful for the time with you as a citizen-led organization and a partner of the city whose sole mission is to create this trail, which is park-like in some ways, as well as a non-motorized transit facility. We know that it's really important that the Parks Advisory Commission know what we're up to. You're a citizen-led entity inside the city structure, actually, that you know what we're doing, and we would like you to be able to support in various ways what it is that we're doing. We understand that the city does not currently have the capacity to include the tree line as part of the park system. We get that, and that the funding for operation and maintenance would be at our responsibility. That's been our assumption from the beginning. And we intend to provide an endowment to do that. And we also intend and are working really hard to raise the funds needed to design, engineer, and build this piece of infrastructure. Some of these funds would necessarily come from big sources, the federal government, the state, foundation sources, and much of that will require city endorsement of the project or for the city itself to be the applicant. And we know that council approves those things and rightly looks to you. So again, we're eager to have you understand what we're up to and be in agreement. One thing I would mention, and I hope we can revisit this sometime in the future, if not now, is that the PROS plan eligibility confers, being included in the PROS planning confers eligibility for Michigan Natural Resources Trust Funds, which is a potential source of funding for us. So we're kind of in the PROS plan, kind of not, and I'm hoping we can unpack that at some point. So as a starting place today, we're going to give you an overview of the plan for the tree line. Don't know how many of you are intimately informed, and an update on what we're doing now to move our project forward, and of course to answer questions that you have. Norman, what would you add at this point? Anything?
Nothing. I'd let you, given the limited time, go ahead.
Okay, we'll zoom ahead. I'd like to just start with our mission statement, which says very clearly, it's sort of like the Pledge of Allegiance. We exist to foster the creation and perpetual maintenance of this trail. That is our mission. And we intend that it becomes something that connects Ann Arbor literally and figuratively. The second part of that mission statement talks about access, safe passage, recreation, building a sense of community, inspiring or enabling an economic impact, making the city even more beautiful. And it says truly improve stormwater quality, but as I've gotten more engaged with the trail, I've been on board 3 years now. Other environmental concerns are ours as well. Brownfield redevelopment, habitat restoration, reducing numbers of car trips. So we may need to revisit this mission statement a little bit. Here's a very generic map of the trail. I'll bring my mouse over here. North is on your left. Here's the border to border trail in purple. This is the MDOT railroad that comes this way, and the Watco railroad that goes all the way through town. The tree line will begin or end, depends on how you want to look at it or which way you're going. Here at the border to border trail, there are two identified ways to get from that point and across Main Street. This red part is the Allen Creek Berm Tunnel, and these other red places along the trail route, which is this orange line, indicate easements or other places where we have permission already to go. This is Miller Avenue, and these are the bikeways. Of course, the Miller stretch has recently been completed. Here's Huron, Liberty, and when we get to the university, there are lots of as yet to be determined routes through that part of the trail. Norman, anything you want to add there?
No, I think keep on.
Okay, I keep on keeping on. Here's just a quick timeline. We've been a community organization of neighbors since 2000, when Joe O'Neill envisioned making the Allen Creek Valley something useful and beautiful with a group of neighbors. That group became a nonprofit in 2007. And our signal moment really is the creation of the Tree Line Master Plan and its adoption by the city in 2017. That prompted a rebranding of the organization from the Allen Creek Greenway Conservancy to the Tree Line Conservancy and the Tree Line Allen Creek Urban Trail, which is what we call it when we're mad at it. We got a collaborative agreement set up with the city in 2019 that sets the broad parameters for how we work in partnership. When I came on board in 2020, so did the pandemic, and we focused on setting up the organization for the long haul, and believe it or not, a lot of fundraising. The alignment study for the north end of the trail was a big project from 2020 and on into 2021, and we'll talk about that tricky part of how to get across Main Street. And this past year, we've been working on getting more engaged with real people in real places in real time. And I'm working on advocacy at all levels of government. Anything there, Norman?
No.
And please holler anyone else if you have questions. That Tree Line Master Plan from 2017 outlined design principles that we still live by. This is supposed to be not just another sidewalk. This is meant to be a unique, wonderful, beautiful, continuous experience that is safe. I like to say for the unaccompanied 10-year-old, that connects Ann Arbor north to south to all its wonderful assets, from the river, which will now include West Broadway Park, all the way to the athletic campus and everything in between. It will be sustainable itself and will contribute to Ann Arbor's sustainability goals. And we're going to follow the course that can get built. This is tricky, 200 years of urban density, and we need to be adaptable. And I see that we're already in 7 minutes. Here's the list of the city's 4 pillars, and I think you can just instantly see that we connect in many interesting ways with all 4 of those. Our biggest project has been figuring how to get across Main Street. That alignment study presented 2 options that were feasible. And for various reasons, the Tree Line Board prefers strongly this option C, which is the one that comes out of the berm tunnel. It would zigzag, let me find my mouse here, back and forth to get up to altitude, to run along Main Street, cross it here and come down into 721 North Main Street. And Norman, here, I think it's where I turn the mic over to you and let you explain the benefits of this route and why we're so focused on it.
This route, we believe, is going to be lower in height if you came out of the pond, which was originally introduced as an option. You would have to go up 36 feet. This would go up about 16 feet. Maintenance across the track would be a problem as far as the railroads were concerned. That's one of the reasons you'd have to go as high as 36 feet so you could put appropriate scaffolding underneath. You would also have the benefit of lower cost with this particular option. Most of the stakeholders that we've talked to that would get us from the berm tunnel over to 721 are supportive. You can see right here, exhibit there on the upper left corner is basically the corner of Main Street, North Main Street, and Depot Street. It would, in all likelihood, provide a much nicer access into the city than what is currently in existence. We would parallel North Main over to the party store at the corner of Summit and North Main, and then pivot to cross into 721. This particular route has a lot of appeal when you look at this type of what we think of as a design inspiration. It is a site, an example of a bridge that exists in Boston, the Appleton Bridge, and this is a leg of that, but it represents the type of concept that we've introduced as part of this particular plan. It would also permit the railroad to do the maintenance that's required. They would not be interfered with. We would put in a removable fence. Would put in a removable fence that, should maintenance be required, it can be done safely and without any interference as it relates to the railroad. It would represent a potential interruption for the use of the trail while that maintenance is going on, but it wouldn't be expected to be very long. Again, this is just a quick snapshot. It takes advantage of a beautiful berm tunnel that's been installed. It provides safe passage. No longer are people crossing the railroad in order to get over to the river. These are all very positive signs, and we would just build on that and then provide for access to the downtown area, but it also provides access to Broadway Park West, which is, as you, I'm sure, aware, also under current development, planning and development. I'll let you go on.
Okay, just to wrap up quickly here, and then we can back up if you have questions and look at slides. While we've been doing that deep dive on option C, we've got other small projects going on to keep things moving forward. The DDA has let us put a test trail in at 415 West Washington. We've had lots of volunteer engagement there. And in addition to scratching out a 15-foot trail with these parking bumpers, we've also been experimenting with how to eradicate invasive species and remediate soil and put in native species, which you see Norman doing there. Another small project is to complete this sidewalk. This is a sidewalk along this stretch of what could be the trail or could be a spur of the trail through the Kingsley condominium site. The city has an easement here, and so we'd like to finish this. This is now Woodchip Trail, and this connects Felch Street directly to the First Street Bikeway. We've also been looking at how we can start to do a demonstration project on this stretch of property right next to the railroad, which the tree line actually owns. It's 410 Miller, goes all the way through to Felch Street, and here's where it comes out. At Miller, you may remember there was a very ugly shed that lurked there for a while that the tree line demolished. And so we're starting to visualize what a little pocket park might be that look like there for that neighborhood. So that's what we have here and would love to take your questions and try to answer anything you would like to know about.
We
Thanks
might,
so much. It's a beautiful presentation. Um,
we might share with you that we'll send to you this set of slides, as well as what are referred to as frequently asked questions that may provide more background with regard to the Tree Line Conservancy and the work that's been underway.
Sounds good. Ruth, I see you have a question.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, and I really haven't thought much about this tree line. I mean, I heard about it. I haven't thought too much about it, but a few months ago I did see some criticism about it. So I do want to ask.
Sure.
So one of the criticisms was that it's extremely expensive and that much of this could be done at grade level, and that we have some good examples now with Division Street and First and William. And so I do want to ask about why is that not like the preferred? I'll start with that.
Sure. And that's a really critical question. It's an important question. And the reason is, when this was put into the city plan, those design principles, safety, a continuous experience, an accessible experience, something beautiful and even exhilarating, those were all things that were thought of. If you've ever stood at the corner of North Main Street and Depot, or North Main and Summit, and tried to cross that street any time of day, but especially in high traffic volumes, it's anything but safe, beautiful, and accessible. Safety is really at the top of this. It's at the top of the list for me of benefits, because so much of what even now has been built is not safe for everyone. And the idea here from the beginning was for the tree line to be safe and accessible for children, for families. And we've done some very informal discussions with families, especially in the Old Fourth Ward neighborhood where this will go. And these are families that don't let their children ride on the bike paths, which, by the way, are only for bikes. This is also a pedestrian route, and that mixed use is also an important part of why we want to go up and over those streets in particular that get tens of thousands of cars a day. The traffic stats are remarkable.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
The other question that I've heard raised significantly is that it's taking on some locations that could be used for housing.
Oh, we are.
And I don't know, like,
yeah.
I'm not that familiar with, so just
that's
really,
why we have these meetings.
Yes, exactly.
We would go through and be an amenity for those city lots that are being considered for affordable housing, namely 721 North Main and 415 West Washington. This is 15 feet at most, 14 feet is the standard, 10 feet of trail, 2 feet on either side. So a 14-foot non-motorized trail that goes through an affordable housing development would provide right outside your door free, safe recreation for everybody, and an easy way to ride north to south through the city to those amenities and to hook up with the bikeways. So we're not trying to, we are in favor of affordable housing and want to help it by being the tree line.
And I would point out, Ruth, that the affordable housing sites that do show the easement for the trail, that easement section is all in floodplain, cannot be built on. So this really provides a nice use and that connectivity that Nan refers to, and the safety issues, having it separate off-road type of trail.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for those questions. Appreciate it.
Rachel, I have next, and then Anne.
Yes, thank you very much for your thoughtful presentation. I wanted to ask about your fundraising efforts. You mentioned in the presentation talk of an endowment, and you also said that you were prioritizing fundraising. Could you speak a little to your fundraising strategy to date and what you've learned so far?
Sure. Boy, we learn something every minute, if not every day. And our fundraising is a comprehensive approach. We have an annual appeal. We have some very generous annual donors. We have foundation support and corporate sponsorship support. These are modest. We're a small organization at this point, 1.5 employees, and a really active and wonderful board. Modest operational costs, but at this point, but this is knowledge work until we start to engineer and put shovels in the ground. So we're fundraising for our own operations, but we are also looking ahead to engineering and construction and endowment. We have a challenge match that was awarded to us at the very end of 2020 and will continue to the end of this year, 2023. That will match dollar for dollar everything that's come into the tree line up to $2.5 million. So we've demonstrated that we can engage the imagination of some very generous individual donors, and that's very helpful. This year we've started looking, or actually last year, we started looking very seriously at infrastructure funding that's coming directly through federal grants from the agencies in Washington, that's coming from appropriations as formula funding to the states and then down to the cities. So we have representation in Washington that we're looking at, and we've been in touch with our U.S. delegations because the tree line itself could be the recipient of earmark funding, and it looks as though that may go ahead in this kind of unpredictable divided Congress. But we're also in conversations with John Fournier at the city about how we join forces in Lansing to bring appropriate funding, not trying to get ahead of anything else, but to bring some of that funding to the city or to the tree line to help get it built. We're part of the city administration's infrastructure plan. We're one of the 3 mega projects, and they're called that not because they're more important than anything else, although that could be argued for the water plant, but because they cost more than any of the other enumerated projects. But at some point, those large tranches of infrastructure funding will need to come our way, which is one of the reasons I bring up the Natural Resources Trust Fund, which is a designated fund at the state that our project would be eligible for if we are part of the 5-year Parks and Recreation Plan.
If you don't mind sharing this level of information, who are your corporate sponsors currently?
Let's see. Norman will help me rattle them off. Bank of Ann Arbor, Highland Insurance, MAV Development, the Shaffron Companies, Kennedy Care, Wickfield Capital, Wickfield Properties, Found, the wonderful store at Carytown, Washtenaw Dairy. So we go from fairly big to fairly small corporations, and we think we have some room to grow there.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. They like it when we mention them.
Go ahead, Anne.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this presentation. Like Ruth, I've been aware of this organization, but haven't really followed it terribly closely. And I'm somebody who actually, my company has offices in the area near where this trail would be. And actually, when I'm in the office, there's a group of us from work who routinely walk in the neighborhood, in the area where this trail would be. And it is kind of interesting to me because I know we're all adults in the company. We have no, we don't bring our children to work on a regular basis. But that said, like, I don't think that I've never heard the comment, or really never thought it myself, like that, this is an area that feels inaccessible, that feels challenging to get around. And I've always thought, like, the most successful trails are those that sort of connect you to places that it wouldn't be easy to get to otherwise on foot or on a bicycle. I'm also somebody who bikes a lot, bikes on rail trails a lot. And the area that this trail is planned for is already covered by, like, there are city sidewalks the entire way. Most of the route is on side streets, aside from having to cross over Main Street a couple of places in Huron. Most of it is on side streets that I always feel like, me personally, I'm happy to bike. I know I don't represent every Ann Arbor citizen. And so I just kind of wonder, like, how you respond to that you're proposing to put a trail into an area that I would already consider really within Ann Arbor already a very walker biker friendly area.
And I think that's also true. I came here as a grad student in 1977, and I would submit that the city is less bikeable now than it was. It feels less safe to a lot of people my age. I'll qualify it that way, than it did. At the same time that it is getting better and better. This is what you've described as kind of the nature of the urban trail. That, of course, there are sidewalks, and in our case, of course, there are bike lanes, and now these really, I think, effective, separated and protected bike ways. Of the 6 or 7 cities that call themselves university cities, places like Durham and Lincoln, Nebraska, and Fort Collins, Colorado, and Lexington, Kentucky, where I've worked before, we are the only university city that doesn't have such a trail running through it, that connects one part of the town to another, that provides a direct way to go, that really privileges people on foot and on bike. So not everyone will use only the tree line all the time. And that's why I think it's important that we are the spine of this bike network, that people can get on and off the tree line, go where they need to go. But to take a trip through our city, this is what the master plan calls for, and what a lot of other cities like us have already done. Norman, anything you want to add to that?
Residents in Water Hill have made it very clear they'd like that type of trail. That's one of the reasons that either the Kingsley Condo sidewalk or utilizing the 410 Miller parcel that the tree line owns would be very welcome. They're looking for ways in which to cut it through the, if you will, through the trees and landside rather than through the streets, because families have told us countless times they will not be comfortable with their children in the bike tracks or the bike lanes. They're just not well designed for safety, for, as Ann alluded to earlier, the separate safe environment to let a 10-year-old ride their bikes in. We do see from a long-term perspective where the trail is going to connect with many of the various bike tracks and through the neighborhoods, and that will be very appealing. But if you get downtown, I think you're going to be much more comfortable in what's being at least envisioned with the tree line trail, which goes through the Allen Creek area into the downtown and out. The other part that we shouldn't ignore is the fact you go from downtown William Street, Main Street, out to the football stadium. People utilize that railroad tracks all the time, and it's not a safe environment. And we're fortunate that we haven't had any major losses, but it is something in particular as the university puts more student housing in that corridor, that I think we all probably should be interested in.
I like to have this slide in my hip pocket. This is what I call the Night of the Living Dead image. This is a night football game. And people coming down that railroad track.
And the
It's
railroad would
a little
love to
scary.
close that off to pedestrians, and this would be a safe way to do that.
Larry, I see that you have your hand up as well.
Yeah, you may have just answered it with that slide, but I was wondering where the south end of the tree line would finish. Is it right at?
If we had our druthers, it would be at South State Street, basically, and the railroad produce station area. That would be, at least at this point in our planning, is the southernmost point. That doesn't mean it'll come to a stop, because there are other trails, B2B, that go further south to Milan and other areas. But at least to get through and provide that connection to the downtown, we focused on that 2 3/4 mile stretch between the Argo Pond and produce station.
It's the hardest part. Did you have a follow-up to that, Larry? Because I just thought of something I wanted to say to Rachel.
No, go ahead.
You started by asking Rachel about endowment. And the way we met, and I didn't answer that part, the way we imagine the endowment fundraising going is as a percentage of construction funds set aside for maintenance, which is a fairly typical way of doing that.
If we go out now and start raising money for endowment, we don't have anything viable to provide where that's going to be supporting. And so our sense, just as Nan has indicated, is a percentage of the dollars received will need to go into the endowment for long-term maintenance.
Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to come back to something you, I guess, asked in the presentation with regard to the pros plan, and just make sure we address whatever questions or concerns you had about that.
I have.
What we're looking for, Steve, what we're looking for at some point is an endorsement, if you will, on the part of the PAC for the type of concept trail, and we'll come back with more definitive information as it develops. But in general, City Council's provided for a collaborative agreement. Our hope is to ask for sort of a re-endorsement of that collaborative agreement as we're now facing 2022 as opposed to 23 rather than 2019. Council's changed. We think we want to be sure that council still is supportive. And similarly, they would probably look to PAC, and to the extent they do, we would hope that there's some level of endorsement. And again, not to be competing for the access to funds or programs, but to acknowledge that if this vision is to be realized, that there is a real benefit to the city.
I will go ahead and step into that, and I think that there's a couple components with that. I think that looking back, I know the PAC has historically put together a resolution of support. We can talk about that as a group with PAC to see if that's something we want to do again. I do think that there's a lot of people who want to be recognized within the pros plan or by PAC for consideration for the MDNR grant funds. You have made it very clear that at this moment, these are not parks. These are not to be maintained by parks. They're not to be built by parks. One of the things that is, if we begin writing grants through the MDNR for you, that is in competition for what we are doing in parks. And so I think that it's a very fine line of where we need to be. We've had this conversation with a couple other groups as well, the balance between what support there is. And so we're happy to have a conversation. I think that the amenity, the vision is a great one. You know, we will take our guidance from council. There are often times when we do get PAC is asked to do things that support or complement our park system in regards to funding. But I think I just want everyone to be aware, and I want to say it publicly here as well, when we apply for something that is not a park or in the park system, that is competing against our ability to do what we need to do in the park system. So there's a balance with that, and we will go through it. So it's not just, if there's years when we're not going to do an MDNR trust fund grant, that might be something that's there.
Precisely.
But at the same time, we have 160 plus parks that we are trying to maintain, grow, and move forward. So I think it's just a balance of how do we communicate that out correctly, be supportive of this. But again, there's a lot of things that we have to balance of when do we make those funds available. And the 300,000 that the trust fund can give you is a nice number, but it's not going to solve your entire project. So
Absolutely. And to be in dialogue about that balance is what's most important. Thanks.
Thank you very much again. Oh, go ahead, Norm. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, it's just been our understanding from the very beginning, and we want to work with.
Well, we really appreciate the thorough presentation and conversation today. Obviously, we're a very engaged group around this project, and I know that we appreciate further updates as you get further down the road. So we really appreciate the dialogue and welcome you back.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very much.
Thanks so much for being here.
Appreciate your terrific questions. Thanks.
So PAC, next on our agenda is a park operations update from Scott Spooner today. Hi, Scott. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for
Good.
being here.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, my name is Scott Spooner. I'm a deputy parks manager here at the city of Ann Arbor. I've been in my current position for about 4 years. Been with the city coming up on 14 years, which is kind of amazing to me. It's been, it goes by in a blink of an eye. I am in charge of the park operations, which is basically the maintenance for all the parks. And I have a presentation that I want to share with you. Get going. There we go. There. So yeah, we are based down at the Wheeler Service Center, which is down by the airport south of Ellsworth Road on Stone School. It's also where all of Public Works is housed, signs and signals, forestry. So we've got sanitary, water, streets, forestry, fleet. Most of the city operations that are not at City Hall are down at the Wheeler Service Center. And that's where we operate out of every day. We have 15 full-time staff. We have 2 supervisors and 13 full-time crew members. And depending on the time of year, between 5 and 15 seasonal staff. Right now we're at our low point. We actually only have 3 seasonals. And during the summer is when we get up closer to the 15 to 20. 20 would be great if we could ever get that. So just some background on the park system, if you're familiar. 2,200 acres, over 160 parks. Included in that are 81 playgrounds, 32 baseball and softball fields, including like those at Vets, but also ones that we do not, that are not maintained at the same level. They're just the neighborhood baseball fields, 18 soccer fields, outdoor and indoor pools, tennis courts, basketball courts. We have the liveries, ice rinks, disc golf courses, dog parks, a dirt bike course, skate park, and 2 golf courses. And most of you all know this, but if you look back at that 15 full-time staff and 5 to 15 seasonal staff, the maintenance for all of those that are not a facility, so all of these that are highlighted, basically falls upon us. So that's a lot for us to do with relatively small amount of people in manpower. During the summer, the biggest job we have is mowing the grass. You can see here are a couple of our mowers. We have the one on the right is a 12-foot wide mower. We have 3 of those, and then a more normal mower like the zero turn that we have there at the soccer fields. We have 7 of those. So all of those parks, basically 10 mowers and people going around and mowing all the parks. That's why we're on a 2-week schedule for most of the parks. We try to get around every 2 weeks to mow. In addition to that, we do light construction work in and around the parks. Here, we put in a retaining wall at Glacier Highlands Park. And this is Rob, and he's putting down the base for that. In addition, things like repairs to some of the infrastructure we have. They're repairing some of the decking at the Argo Boardwalk. Cement work, like they're pouring a pad that we then put absentee ballot boxes on out at Cobblestone. This is the dock at Gallup. The old dock had been there for quite a while. We tore the whole old structure out and replaced it 3 years ago over the winter. And you can see all of that. I love that picture because I don't know, it looks so clean and nice and regimented there. There's a finished picture after it was done in the spring. If you look back, all those playgrounds, this is the UAP at Gallup, and you can see the surfacing there is what's called poured in place. And that's kind of a rubberized surface that doesn't need as much maintenance as the normal surface. And the normal surface we have on 90% of our playgrounds is fiber, which is basically an engineered wood fiber. This is Glacier Highlands Park. And what we did is we went in and we dug out all the old wood mulch and replaced the fabric that was underneath that prevents the weeds. And we laid down new fiber. We work really closely with Give 365. They do around 20 to 30 volunteer days a year just replacing fiber. We go in and we remove all the old wood mulch and prep it, and they have volunteers that come out. We stage the mulch and they spread it around. And then you can see the after picture right here. You can see it looks a lot nicer and freshened up, and basically almost like a new playground. That's another big job that we do every year on those 81 playgrounds. We don't get, like I said, we get 20 to 30 a year. And that's a good goal for us to shoot for. And then right now, a lot of the work that we're doing, not this year so far, but we help streets a little bit in the streets and city-owned sidewalks, but then also we remove snow from paths throughout the park system, the border-to-border trail, around our facilities. We do the parking lots at all the facilities that are open during the winter. And then another of our big projects right now we're replacing all of the old wooden signs and trying to get these new plastic signs. We make them in-house and put them out in the spring. We do that we have that CNC machine that's in the middle there down at the Wheeler Center. I actually took that picture today. Those are 2 signs that we made up today. And then they'll go out in the spring. With over 160 parks, some parks have multiple signs. You can end up with a lot of signs, and it's just one of my big projects when I came on was to get all of those signs consistent. They look the same, they have the same information, and it's just a big project. One of the other projects we do is tree trimming. You can see on the left is a tree at Scheffler Park before the trimming, and then after the trimming, we cleared out most of the dead wood, and that tree is healthier because of all of that being gone. The big thing that we do, aside from those regular maintenance issues, is we respond to situations that occur, that come up, be it the trash is overflowing at this park, to there's a light on the path on Riverside that's out. The way that those come in most of the time is through the A2 Fix-It, a2fixit.com. We also have an app. If you are not familiar with it, I would encourage all of you to go in and look at that. And it goes not only for parks, it's anything throughout the city of Ann Arbor. If there is a problem, you can report it. It gets routed to the correct people that can fix it. And that is all I have.
Thank
I
you
have
so much, Scott.
Time for questions.
Thanks so much. What's your call volume on the A2 Fix-It situation? However long that's been in place, I think it's been a couple of years, right?
Yeah, it really depends. Right now, a lot of we don't get too many per day, but it goes up and down. In the spring, we get a lot of complaints about the grass being too long. I would say on an average day, we get 5 to 6 requests through the A2 Fix-It app. Right now, it's a little lower. At our heavy times, higher than that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what our record is, but it's probably around 20.
Thanks. Anne.
Hi, thanks, Scott. It's always impressive to see how much a handful of people can get done in a year. And I think your team is an example of that. I also, I'm our liaison to the Environmental Commission. And so I'm aware of their advocacy for No Mow May. And I know that it came up last May, kind of rather suddenly, and caught Parks and you somewhat unawares. And I'm just kind of curious, having talked to Rita Mitchell a little bit about no mow areas, or more like sort of natural areas within the parks where there is currently grass, turf grass. And I'm curious how that affects, what kind of an effect, negative or positive, that might have on park maintenance if there are no mow or more like naturalistic areas within the city park. So, setting aside our big natural areas that we already have, but, if I live by Virginia Park, so I always use it as my example, if they decide that they, want to have the slope down to the street to be unmowed, either just in the month of May or for the whole season, growing season, what effect would that have on your team?
Well, it's important to realize that you can't really set aside the areas, the natural areas, because even if we have nature areas and we have parks, but we also have, like, Sugar Bush Park is a great one. It's not a nature area and it's not a park because there's a little of both in each of them. So there are areas we don't mow. There are a lot of areas we don't mow in our parks, and that's not in just the nature areas. But if you were, the thing with grass is, if you have grass, the maintenance, the best, easiest, most efficient way to maintain it is to mow it. It's evolved to it grows from a crown in the ground up, and it's evolved to basically replenish that leaf blade very fast. If it doesn't get mowed, it can get kind of out of control. And there are grasses that do very well as like a 3-foot tall grass. The grasses we have in most of our parks, the turf grasses, do not do well once they get that. And you start getting into it starts to crowd out the other areas. It kills the grass. It creates a lot of problems to not mow turf grasses. With that being said, it did take us a little by surprise last spring. We're more prepared for it now. And in fact, Sean Reynolds from OSI just shared something with the Environmental Commission today, I think, about what we want to do in this coming spring for the No Mow May. We've got some areas we do want to try some not mowing. We have some areas that we want to maybe do like a demonstration area of what you can do if you don't want turf grass for your lawn. And I've been I worked very hard with Erica Smith in the Give 365 program. They developed some places that we can do some things so that we can participate in the No Mow May, but it's not going to be overall not mowing any of our parks.
Yeah, and Scott, I'll jump in to streamline this comment a little bit. Our goal is to develop a process for areas that we maintain differently. Either whether we mow it or we maintain a natural area or a demonstration garden, there's maintenance that goes along with it. The goal of this is not to not maintain or mow grass. It is to identify additional potential spaces that we can increase some of the non-turf grass in some of our parks. But I don't want anyone to get the idea that we're just going to let things grow because that makes it better for bees. Our goal is to provide areas in the parks that are maintained in an appropriate manner to help us have quality, safe spaces that benefit a variety of users. So that's what we're looking to do, is figure out how can we maintain areas differently to get the results of both parks, Environmental Commission, residents, and all of that side. So.
Ruth, question.
Yeah, just 3 brief comments. First is, I have used A2Fixit for both parks and non-park stuff, and I have to say I've been really impressed at the turnaround. If there's a tree that looks dangerous to me, or a branch that's going to fall on come back 2 days later and it's dealt with, and so overall, Scott, I just want to say I really appreciate how well kept our parks are, and please just pass on to the rest of your team that we do notice it. And I'm in all kinds of parks, and I think overall, it's great job.
Thank you.
I know sometimes the soccer fields, it's like, oh, it's too long or whatever, but overall, it's like 95% of the time, it's really great. I'll just say, as someone who has a ton of spring allergies, I did find No Mow May very difficult, and will not be doing it in my house. And just keep that in mind.
Well, I really appreciate you saying that, especially the manner that we keep our parks. That does mean a lot. Before I was here, I was at the golf courses, and one of my problems is when I go out into the golf course or I go out to the parks, I tend to see the problems and I don't see the good things. And that's exactly how it is with emails. We usually don't get an email that says, oh, I was out at Virginia Park and it was great and I had a great time. We usually hear the complaints. So every time I hear compliments, it really, thank you. I
should send that to your team in writing. And I'll also say, sometimes I've found problems like graffiti or stuff, and they get taken care of really quickly. So I encourage people to use A2Fixit. And Josh, maybe that's something that you can talk to the communications staff about, that promoting that it works in parks too.
Yeah, it is the best way. It is the most direct way. Scott and I will regularly get various emails from residents, from council members, from PAC members, from anybody in the community. And that will always take us 2 or 3 steps to get it to where it needs to be. Whereas A2Fixit gets it right into the hands of the people that can do the work immediately. It is the best way to go. And it is a good reminder as we come out of this winter season. And, it's a good reminder for us to include that in our Gov delivery and our social media, as a reminder for that.
I would say, yeah, if you were to go to A2Fixit right now and put in a complaint, it gets automatically put into the queue. And when my guys will be starting tomorrow at 5:30 in the morning. And if you were to write me an email, I would not see it until after they're already gone for the day. They go in and they see that come in at 5:30 in the morning, and they can plan their day. Like, you're going to be out near Island Park, hit the garbage there when you are there, and gets taken care of. It's the best way.
Thanks so much, Scott.
Just want to take one thing from me, just because I have the floor, and I just want to thank Scott. Over the last year, he has been as coming into this role that I am. Scott has been amazing as a support. What he does with park operations and the team that he leads, with Jason and Kevin and all of the staff underneath them is an amazing job. He's got that part of the house in hand. They do a great job. I'm excited to move forward with it. But Scott and that group, he could have spent another 25, 30, 40 minutes talking about all the little things that they do, the random things that they get asked to do that you wouldn't think would be part of their job, but they find a way to make sure that it gets done and keeps our operations moving forward. So I just wanted to say publicly thanks to Scott for all the work last year and what we do moving forward.
You're here.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Scott. All right, thanks for joining us. I think we will we'll move along with our agenda here. Hillary is here to talk to us today about the Bandimere Bridge again, where we've got a change order that we need to approve for, my understanding is work that has already been completed.
Correct. Yes. Let me just put a few slides together, nothing fancy. Yes, so we have been talking about this bridge a lot. It's been an interesting process. We're here today to talk about a third change order of the project. Really, the first two happened at like the same time. One we were able to kind of approve quickly, and then the other one we had to go to city council for, but those kind of came at the same time. And then once those were done, we just kind of kept a running log of things. And at the end, there were some additional items that came up. And I told the contractor, hey, I'll have to go back to city council for approval on these. And, I can't technically, tell you to do this work until I have that. And they were fine with kind of going ahead and taking care of it at risk just to get it opened and functional. So that's kind of where we're at. So kind of coming to you after the fact on these items. And so I just wanted to touch base on kind of what additional unanticipated work came up for change order 1 and 2 first. The big things that are driving these changes are first, the steel deterioration was worse than we had expected, or it had basically worsened a lot since the last full inspection in 2018. We did anticipate this. It happens on a lot of our bridge projects. Once you get in there and open things up, it can be worse than what was visible during the inspection. And so that's why we, put higher contingencies on these projects, but this even, was more than that could have covered. And, a lot of this is kind of, these areas aren't really accessible and visible until you remove the decking. So this is just a picture from one of our, project correspondents. So you can see, these are the structural support beams that usually have the bridge decking on top of them where you would walk. And so what they do is they install what they call false decking down below. And that's what you see this person standing on so that they can get in there, do all this up close welding work. So the level of deterioration that you can see once you have this arrangement is just different than what you can see when the decking is on and, you're just looking at it from the banks of the river and kind of seeing as far as you can go. So here's another picture of when all the decking was removed and the false decking below. And you can just, visually see how much more of the steel is exposed here. So, originally we had a 15% contingency, which was around $76,000. When we opened it up and saw that things were much worse than expected, we did one change order, kind of using that contingency is around $40,700. We did that one under the existing contingency because we just had to keep the work going and we didn't want to slow things down. And then a larger chunk of the money, this $84,000, was in change order 2. That work went to city council, was approved back in mid-October. But knowing that like going to city council, it took a couple weeks. That's why we kind of split it into 2 so that we could keep certain work going and not affect the schedule any more than, it ended up being affected regardless. So, this was, change orders 1 and 2 were pretty early on in the project, again, mid-October. And so since then, we've just been kind of logging all the miscellaneous repairs and needs that happened since then. So, you can kind of see this breakdown. It was included in the resolution. The grand total is an additional $86,000. So just to talk about a few of the things driving this, one, we talk about things like leap holes. When going through this, they pull out the original construction drawings for when the bridges were built. And you could see that in the original drawings, weep holes were kind of intended. Weep holes are these things that basically allow moisture to leave the steel so it doesn't freeze and expand and cause cracking or damage. And so without those, moisture can get trapped. And so we don't know why they weren't originally put in, but we, talked with the truss manufacturer. They recommended, hey, while you're doing this project, you should really put those in. So some of these things are things like that that'll hopefully prevent future, repair down the line and, not having the same level of deterioration that we're seeing now. Some other things that happened at the end of the project. So this is a view from under the bridge, and this is the false decking that was installed so that the work could be done. So the false decking is above these, they kind of call them diagonals. it was installed at this level basically to maintain enough clearance down below to maintain river traffic. But what happened was, it did cover up some of this structural support. That support hadn't been identified for needing repair before the project began. But once the contractor was down there, they had a barge because they needed to do some work. And I saw, hey, you know what? There's actually some deterioration below the decking that we couldn't see it until the end. And we started getting in here and taking it out. So some of these things are just, once we have access, just kind of the nature of the phasing of the project came up kind of at the very, very end. And then, some other things that brought up, additional need for repair is like cleaning the steel to kind of prepare it for painting. They use various tools to kind of remove the rust and scale from the beams. And, that also can kind of clear out things in either C holes, or the steel was already, had already deteriorated and was so thin that just the process of cleaning it could have created holes as well. We don't really know, but for example, during cleaning, holes were found in the webs of the floor beams, 19 more repairs were required. Steel section loss, had created some holes, and those weren't identified until they were being cleaned. And then there's just, things like these lateral bracing members that, were located directly above the river and weren't really accessible during the inspection that, doesn't have a barge. They're really just looking at the abutments on either end. And typically, looking at the abutments is enough because, typically the abutments have the most deterioration because they don't have the airflow that the center of the bridge has. They usually have vegetation. And so those areas usually wear quicker and have more deterioration than the center. So, these are some of the reasons driving, all these unexpected changes. And then also to note, there was this time delay. So the last full inspection was in 2018. We put drawings together and went out to bid in 2019. And then we did have to postpone some of this work. We did a quick kind of high level inspection in 2020, just when we were replacing a few deck boards, but there wasn't another inspection performed because there is a cost associated with it. And we kind of put the same bid documents out. So whether, there was just more deterioration in that, I guess 4 or 5 year period, we won't really know. But so here we are with change order 3. It's an increase, an additional increase, $86,000. So we do have another $35,000 remaining in the project contingency, and then we'd be asking for another $50,000 from the park maintenance and capital improvement millage. So it's unfortunate this project, has had more repairs needed that weren't expected than some of the other bridges that we had. The one thing that's still, to kind of put it in perspective, is that this contractor's bid was so much lower than the next highest bid. So I believe we had 4 bids on this project. And even with all of these increases, the total cost is still below the next highest bid. So just something to put it in perspective. But that's just kind of a high level overview. I'd be happy to answer any questions about this. Do the best I can without our engineers with us today.
Thank you so much, Hillary. It does sound like one of these projects that you just don't know how bad it's going to be until you open everything up and then you get a better picture. And it sounds like the contingency just wasn't quite enough to cover it this time. Couple questions. Anne, go ahead.
Hi, thanks, Hillary, for your explanation of what the changes were, the additional costs were. When the contractor identifies additional work that they feel needs to be done, does the city send an engineer out to confirm that?
Yeah, so it's kind of a 2 ways, but yes, we have an engineering consultant who put the drawings together originally. They're also one that's out there inspecting. So some of this work was flagged by the engineer. Once it opens up, they go out there and they mark additional areas for repair. Some of it is the contractor brings it to attention, and they'll say things like, hey, I found this hole here. It wasn't marked by someone for repair. Is this something that you also wanted fixed? or, hey, we saw this, area that we couldn't see before. I want you to take a look at it. So I'd say both bring it up, but the engineer is reviewing all of this. And then they're coming to me and saying, hey, this is the status. This is what's going on. This is what we think needs to happen. We're recommending either be repaired or, hey, the repair is so much that, replacing this member is going to get you a better long-term solution. So we kind of talk through those, but we're really relying on this engineering consultant to make their, best judgment call for what needs to be fixed during this project.
Okay. I had two other little things.
Yeah.
One was, is there anything about this particular site that, or this location that would make it prone to more rapid deterioration of the bridge? Or is this just considered kind of like the typical scale of deterioration that you would see on a bridge that is as old as this one is?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I would say there's a couple of factors here. First, this bridge is older, and until about, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago, we had been salting the bridges. And then because of all these problems that we've been seeing where a lot of these bridges were corroding, we stopped that practice. On these two bridges, there's a pedestrian bridge and a vehicle bridge. What we found is the vehicle bridge had a lot more deterioration. And the thinking is that, yes, we've been salting for years. And even though we stopped, there's still salt that's coming in from cars driving in off the street, coming in off the highway. There's still salt and there's tires that's likely making its way onto here. So I think the salt didn't help us for years. It's not something that we're doing anymore, but the nature of vehicle bridges is that salt can still get in there because of cars coming from other places.
Okay. And then my last question was just, if we approve this overrun, what comes, what can we not do? Like what maintenance or what projects are not going to happen because it's got to come out of budget that might have been earmarked for something else?
Yeah. So, Josh, you might be able to speak to this, but I believe there's kind of an overall capital project contingency that we'd be drawing from. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we have a set amount of projects. I mean, at this point, we had not allocated the entire amount for any particular projects. At this point, we're working through them. So this is not going to prevent anything in this year from being done. We always have a small amount of our contingency that we keep available for situations like this. We just don't know everything that's going to happen. So this just means that between now and June 30th, we hope there aren't a couple other big unknowns that come about that we would have to push till July 1st type of thing. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, and I'd also just like to add to, and another thing to think about, these repairs are quite expensive. The cost of building a new bridge would be, multiples of this. So, while it is a lot to keep maintaining this, our hope is that, hey, we get another 20 years out of this bridge. Until then, we have to replace it, which will get into the millions of dollars instead of, these hundreds of thousands of dollars. So still hoping that'll be a good long-term investment.
Ruth, go ahead.
Yeah. So I think, first of all, obviously, it would be way worse to not fix this stuff and then in 5 years find out that we do need to fix it. So I'm for it. So just one thought I had is that maybe these kind of bridge projects are something that we should have larger contingencies for in the future. And also just wondering, it said something like web brace. What is a web brace?
That's a good, I'm not gonna be able to describe that as a non-engineer. It's some of the structural support in this truss structure. I'm sorry that I can't tell
That's
you
okay.
more specific.
That's okay.
But, to your point, I would agree that, usually the places where we see that we need larger contingencies are things like the bridges where we don't really know what we're getting into fully until we open it up. Similarly with older buildings as well. You know, there's always the case of, oh, you think we're going to do this, but oh, we open up the wall and then we find mold or asbestos or, you know, something else. And so a lot of times, you know, these repairs to older things, you know, when we're working on a playground, you know, there's usually not big surprises like this. So, you know, same with trails. So these types of things I would say would benefit from larger contingencies because there are more unknowns.
And I will also add that there's, you know, we had this gap of time. We won't, hopefully we don't have to have, you know, evaluations in 2018 and then get ready to do it and then go through a pandemic again. So there's some of that, you know, we will be more consistent with our processes and our timing so that when we do our evaluations, we know the turnaround will be quicker, which is part of where the deterioration also took place, is that there was a gap of time between the initial evaluation and the vision and that. So, you know, we're learning. We've got a lot of bridges that are coming our way, so we'll continue to learn from them and hopefully be better at working with our RFPs to ensure that we have a closer contract amount than what this one was.
So should I move to fund this contingency change order / contingency from the what's the fund, Josh?
It's Parks Millage.
From the Parks Millage Fund.
As needed, right? Because we've got the contingency to use up on this project.
Yes, the additional, yes.
Thank you for that. Sounded like a motion, Ruth. Thank you very much. Is there a second? Steve, second. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No. All right, the motion carries. Hillary,
Lauren, with apologies, I have to step out. I don't have a report from the Center of the City Council of Commons anyway, because we didn't meet earlier this month. So,
all right, thank you, Steve. You'll be missed. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much, Hillary. We're now going to go to the inserted portion of our agenda, which we will title reports. And I guess will be sort of 7B-ish. Why don't we start with a report from the Parks Manager, and over to you, Josh.
Yep. I'll be quick with this. Obviously, I want to thank everyone for the pros plan. After our special meeting on the 3rd, on the 4th, it went to Planning Commission. There were a few less comments at Planning Commission, but good discussion. They approved it, and then on January 9th, went to Council. I appreciate Councilmember Radina and Watson's support of the pros plan. There was one comment made by Mr. Deck, but then was very well supported by Council. So greatly appreciate all the work that was done. It's truly a team effort. It's a very good document that we're excited to get buttoned up and submitted to the state by the end of the month. So exciting for us what we can do moving forward with that. We're currently in the budget process, working through the various budgets, looking at how we're doing, what we need to do, and what we hope to do moving forward. We'll have a presentation for PAC on the impacts next month that we'll be looking to do and where we're at with that. Summer programming is just around the corner. Staff are working on their program planning. We are going to begin registration for our summer programming on April 5th at 8 a.m. So mark that calendar down. There'll be lots of communication out for all the camps and summer swim lessons and programming, but we're excited about what's going on with that. One staff transition I would like to bring up, Bill Meeks, who has been our recreation supervisor at Veterans Memorial, has taken another position within the city beginning at the end of this month. So I wanted to wish him well and thank him for the great work that he's done at Vets in his 9 years of being there. He will be sorely missed, but fortunately it gives Darius a great opportunity to get his feet wet at a facility. Between him and Sarah Stewart, they'll be making sure that the two rinks finish out their respective seasons in positive manner. So I wish Bill luck and good luck in the future, but he will be missed, and we'll get moving forward with that transition and staffing here shortly. It's really all that I have. And then, yeah, any questions?
Thanks so much, Josh. Questions? All right, moving on. Do we have a report from RAC this week? Larry, or this month?
Yeah, just a couple quick things. RAC, or I should say Rec and Ed, is currently running the winter season classes and sports. For some, registration is still ongoing. We're offering a new sport this winter, high school boys volleyball. That's a no cut, everybody plays. And there are separate leagues for grades 9, 10 and grades 11, 12. We are still running the after school care programs at Abbott, Lakewood, and Pittsfield schools, and planning to open an additional program at Wines, and continuing to work on hiring adults and 16, 17-year-old students to work with the elementary school students in those programs. That's it for Rec and Ed.
All right. Thanks very much, Larry. Reports from our relevant commissions. We heard that there is no report from Center of the City. Anne, is there a report from the Environmental Commission or the Bike Group?
The Bike Group has not met recently. Their work having mostly concluded with the report that they made, and we haven't formed anything yet for the pump track going forward. For Environmental Commission, they met last week. It was a planning meeting, sort of figuring out what their focus areas will be for this coming year. I did not attend it, but I did see the outcome of it, which was a document that I think is going to be forwarded to City Council. Some items on there that, are sort of peripherally related to parks. So you're going to continue, the pollinator group is going to continue with their efforts to figure out how to convert more turf grass to more native species. Whether that affects the parks or not, it remains to be seen. I saw on there that there was some interest in terms of water quality, determining where pesticides are used within the city. So you might see some questions come up about that. I know that I've always heard that our playgrounds, we don't put any pesticides or herbicides down. So I don't think that, they'll be disappointed by what Parks has to say in that regard. And then one thing that was sort of interesting also, they'd like to kind of investigate what would be involved to make swimming in the Huron River safe. And so given that we have so many parks along the rivers, I just bring that up. And I think that was about it as far as what might be of interest as parks.
I will, and the communication that was sent by staff to the pollinator group, once that is officially goes to pollinators and the Environmental Commission, I will share with this group as well, so you can see the response that was provided by all of parks, all of city staff, but an emphasis with parks. So,
Great, thank you very much, Anne. I believe that would complete our added agenda section. And then we'll move along, I think, to our second public commentary section. Is there anyone on the line?
Nope.
All right, no callers. In that case, the communications have been in your packet. And with that, I believe we can adjourn our meeting. So thank you very much for attending today, everybody. I know we've had a very busy month at PAC. We've met more than usual. Thank you for allowing us to have a quorum at all of these meetings. It really makes a huge difference. And thanks to staff for all of their hard work and time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.